Hey there, Goa fans. Mark, DJ Solitaire here with episode 17 of Retro Goa Explorations, my series exploring what I think are the greatest tracks produced in the 90s in the Goa Trance psychedelic dance movement. And today, a kind of a one-off. This is the only collaboration I know of between these two artists, and interestingly enough, it is the first track on the first CD that I purchased when I first started actually being able to buy this music. And interestingly, it's also one that I've never played out. But wow, this track really brings back a lot of memories. And this is the Resistor by Dynamix, spelt Dynamix with an X at the end of it, that I know from one of the producers, Graham Wood, who produced this track with Martin Freeland of Man with No Name, Graham being one of the two head honchos of the Infinity Project. This is the first track on the Dragonfly compilation that, as I've said before, was the first CD I bought probably in the beginning of December or late November 1994. As I recounted in an earlier episode, I'd been on the dance floor at one of the Odyssey parties, and a fellow also named Mark leaned over and said, "Oh, if you like this music, you should probably check out the Dragonfly label." And he told me which shop to go to, and this is the one that I bought. And back in the day, we had portable CD players, and I had mine with me, and I took the CD out and I plopped it in the player, and the opening strains of this beautiful piece of music came out. And for me, this I instantly had that, oh, this is it. This is the music that I've been having to go to these events to hear every 2 weeks. And that was kind of how often Odyssey parties were happening. There were, of course, some other one-offs, but not as many as of that point. The one that I heard Ollie play at, of course, that really formative one was one such event. But so yeah, so the opening strains of this track are for me that whole, oh my gosh, this is it. This is that sound. And but I've never played it out. It's 130 BPM, which is really, again, slow by today's standards, but it was fairly average. It was definitely in the range. Most of this incredible CD is between 130 and 139, and about half of them in the 130 to 135, 36 range. So yeah, this is a beautiful track. Now, I touched in with Graham before filming this episode, and he said that it was produced at Martin's studio in South London. And he said, yeah, we probably should have written some more tracks together. And I said, I think so. There were 3 Infinity Project tracks that had Martin, Man with No Name, involved in them. There was Brain Baka. First, there was Super Booster, Brain Baka, and then Alien Airport, real classic. Probably, again, all tracks that I'll be wanting to feature in this series. So this track, again, is absolutely gorgeous. One of the things that strikes me each time I listen to it is the beauty. The way there's this lush, lyrical, fluidly phrased melody with beautiful synth sounds and very simple, beautiful patterns that go up and down, wonderful dancing between notes, and very interesting progressions. And again, part of that key, no pun intended, of what was going on back then, switching between major and minor intervals. And this is something that I think was done a lot back then that lent this real mystical quality to the music. I think nowadays tracks tend to be in a major key or in a minor key. And back then there was a lot of movement with major intervals and minor intervals. And where you're going to notice that is generally in the third. It's the third note of a scale. It's going to be different. There's one extra step for a major chord and one step down on that third note for a minor. And in this track as well, there's dancing around with a bunch of different intervals, including fifths. But it moves between those major and minor intervals. And it really adds a certain something that I love. So I'll say a little bit more as we're listening to the track, but let's get this started. This beautiful track. By the way, which also has on the credits, there's a Danny Dawson who's credited. And Graham looked at me quizzically when I brought it up. I was like, I don't remember who that is. I know it was at Martin's place and it was just the two of us. There was a Dan Zamani who used to do production on some of these early tracks, but it's not him. So sorry, Danny, if there isn't a memory about who you are and if you did contribute to this, but somehow it seems to be a bit of a mystical, unknown individual. So let's listen to The Resistor by Dynamix, Graham Wood with Martin Freeland. So again, like I was naming, just beautiful synth sound, very clean. Some cool voices there. Just really beautiful notes, just one after the other. Voices start coming in a little bit more. Some cool little sounds coming in there. Love that spacey sound. So calm before it really kicks in. Beautiful, rubbery sound. Notice the rhythm, notice the intervals. It's totally different from what we hear today. Beautiful sort of whoosh kind of sound. This little chicka chicka kind of rhythm. And this is where we start getting a sound it's got pitch, but it doesn't have tone. Right? So it doesn't correspond to notes on the scale. So it goes up and then goes down. So we have that beautiful melodic stuff, and then we have that stuff that's like kind of textured. But again, it's got these patterns that repeat. And again, all of this stuff is going to sound really different on a big system. I'm going to have to play this out finally, where you notice those patterns a lot more. Beautiful dancing between those notes, and just this cool riff that seems to go up and goes down, and just through how the sounds are being processed. Really those clean textures, right? Everything's really transparently layered. And this beautiful part here. That echoing kind of effect. And the layers of those notes, just beautiful. And then this just magical, beautiful intervals, beautiful voicing, beautiful sound. All that textured stuff is going on as well. And that sound comes back. That mantra-like effect with this repetition. I love the rhythmic stuff, just adds that, and adds some texture, and it adds a bit of those patterns that keep repeating, that sort of Morse code like stuff. And that voice coming back in. kick drops out here again. Really, that's like, again, this message being beamed out, or this message that we're receiving. That's being doubled a little bit. Then variation, different kind of development. And listen to the storyline. I mean, how all of these things evolve, and it's just so organic. And some of the parts that we've heard before coming back in. Beautiful phrase. I mean, just a really simple, beautiful pattern. That comes back in. Again, just as we've heard in so many tracks, all these different layers playing together so beautifully. Ooh, almost everything drops away. The kind of echo effects there is on the percussion there. And that kind of declamatory, very simple, repeated note. A little bit of a moving between notes with that pattern, the rhythm, and then different melodic content, different rhythmic content, all these different sounds beautifully, transparently voiced. How everything's coming together. Still got that rubbery bass as the kicks dropped out. Just prepares to unwind, and then it's going to end. And there we have it. How long was that little track? Just under 7 minutes, 6:48. So really fantastic, eh? And 130 BPM, really on the slow side, light textures. You know, one of the things that got me when I first started hearing this music, I was like, you know, going to a nightclub. I mean, of course, the stuff is better outdoors, and we've talked about that and still will, but, you know, going to a club and hearing this music that was clearly modern, it was intended to be danced to, and it's beautiful. Imagine that for a concept. Not like, oh, if we're going to dance to it and we're going to be rebellious, we need to hear some sort of ugly, gnarly music. I mean, you know, there's a place for some gnarly sounds and so on, but just the fact that there can be something beautiful, beautiful melodies, beautiful sounds, doesn't have to sound rough. You know, and that's one of the things I think Goa has had a bit of a reputation in some circles for having a rougher sound. There were some comments on a previous video when we were watching the stream about that, and how, you know, listen, there's a lot of really refined sounds in some of the proto-Goa stuff. Yes, there was a bit more of a tribal sound, and, you know, some tracks did have rougher sounds in there, but I find there's always been a level of refinement and beauty to it, even when there is that, you know, kind of stuff that's got a little bit of edge. But compared to a lot of really dissonant music, You know, a lot of techno where it's can have a more abrasive edge and there isn't that melodic content, or there aren't the synth sounds that are as beautiful. Certainly not the harmonic and melodic progressions. House music that's always kind of got this same unresolved chord that you keep waiting for something to happen and it never quite does. Uh, doesn't really take you on a trip where you're sort of actually feeling that you've gotten anywhere. I just love the simplicity and the directness of this kind of music, and again the harmonic language, the fact that there's melodic content that's hummable, it's very danceable, and then that there's that dancing between melodic, you know, the minor and the major keys. It's just a lot of different factors going on, and you know, these folks didn't necessarily, they weren't sitting here, you know, they're analyzing it with an electron microscope, like a certain classical musician, not analyzing it even that deeply, but just a few observations. So, you know, they knew what was working. And this is just what evolved. This is the music that decided to help itself be created through these great musicians. So there we go. Just I think a beautiful track, again, one that for me instantly puts me in mind of that really magical time where this was all new. This music that had been so unobtainable was actually, hey, you know, there's a whole CD filled with this music, you know, and I was able to actually have this and listen to it on my own. Uh, about which I will actually make a note. Uh, there was something quite special about the fact that in those days, going to parties was how you heard the music. You know, there was no internet. You know, apparently there were a few mixtapes, you know, that were going on. Ollie had one that was circulating in early 94. Then there was one in later 94 as well. The audio file of which he gave me on one of his last trips to Vancouver. And but generally, you know, the music was to be heard at parties. And yes, of course, you know, at a lot of the parties there was music that was on vinyl that was being played. The artists were trading it on dat, but it was never designed for home listening, which again, you know, just because something's not designed a certain way doesn't mean you don't do it. Your nose wasn't designed to hold glasses, but you know, that does work. Your body wasn't designed to hold clothes, but you know, that's what we do. uh yeah, at times maybe not, but you know, there we go. So but I find that there's something that's happened now where it's almost too easy for folks to listen to the music at home. It's, I mean, it's fantastic that we're able to, you know, I'm able to do this presentation with people around the world who are watching these videos, and you know, that we can listen to this music at home. But I've spoken before to the fact that when you're at a party, you're listening to this music on a system where your body and speakers are in inverse proportionate size to what's at home. At an event, the speakers are larger than your body. At home, your body is much larger than the speakers. How you experience the sound is going to be different. And I think that when you listen for many, many hours over the years, as you have, to this music at home, it's kind of been normalized, and you start to hear it in a very different way and in a different context. Again, it doesn't have to be bad, but I know that there was this excitement of going to these events back then and not knowing what you were going to hear, being excited about the whole experience, being excited about the journey, and what sounds you were going to hear and how you were going to experience that. So it's a double-edged sword, like everything in life, you know. So having this music, you know, this track is like that whole, hey, I can actually possess some of this music, as it were, and be able to listen to it when I want. And that was wonderful. And I'm also aware of the fact that, you know, we do want to hear this music at events and still go to events. And, you know, as much as I do have some of my mixes online, and that's great, I'm very happy for people to be able to hear them. I also want to be heard at events. And I want people to hear that story and experience that story viscerally in the same physical space where the sound waves are coming and washing over you in the same space as other people. There, it is a completely different experience. And well, you know, we listen as we can, and hopefully we keep dancing together. So I'll end that sermon now and leave you all listening to this fantastic track by Graham Wood of the Infinity Project, Martin Freeland of Man with No Name, and perhaps some mysterious existent or non-existent individual, Danny Dawson, if there is such a person. The beautiful track, The Resistor by Dynamix. I'm Mark, DJ Solitaire. We'll see you again next time.